Imagine for a moment that Wizards of the Coast announced that they are re-releasing the original 1975 Dungeons & Dragons white box, a complete, accurate reproduction of the nostalgic and famous 5th printing of the original books. What's the occasion? Well, the 50th anniversary of Dungeons & Dragons, no less. This would be a celebration of the franchise for everyone. This would be extremely exciting and a welcome new addition to role-playing, providing an accessible way for modern players to rediscover the original version of D&D, or at least the incredible art that it contained. Then imagine that Wizards revealed that this new, fun anniversary product would be released and sold for $1,000. And sure, no one is forcing you to buy this, but it would perhaps feel a little out of touch, a little greedy, perhaps? Then imagine that Wizards began releasing supplements for Dungeons & Dragons every single month. A new class, a new subclass, more monsters, more settings, more stuff. Every time you open YouTube, another video appears showing you spoilers for new, upcoming classes that you have to get hyped for. At first, you might be excited. More content, huzzah! Who does not love more content? Of course, it might start to get a little overwhelming. You might come to resent the new products as they quickly overtake your capacity for interest as quickly as they've overtaken your YouTube home screen. Oh, a reskinned ranger, huh? How fun. Oh, a new Princess Celestia Warlock patron, huh? Amazing. And then imagine that the prices of those supplements began to double every single month. The price just 1 month goes up from $50 to $100. And why? Well, because the subclasses in the most recent, more expensive books are better. They're more effective, they're stronger, they offer more options, more compelling gameplay. Perhaps the new Druid subclass, for example, can turn into aberrations and owlbears. Or the newest Bard subclass can successfully suck himself off. It's only fair that they cost more, right? And then imagine if everyone complained about these changes, but not only did Wizards of the Coast keep doing them, but Wizards began to report that they were making more money than ever before, that this technique is working, that it's successful. Dungeons & Dragons is doing better than ever. What would you do? What if you love the game? What if you've invested yourself emotionally, financially, and socially in that game? What if your friends all continue to play, but they're just a lot more miserable about it? Well, this is the life of a Magic the Gathering player in 2023. You see, this week, Wizards of the Coast have once again become embroiled in controversy and scandal. But for once, it's not about Dungeons & Dragons. Sort of. You see, as it happens, Wizards of the Coast have a lot of properties and games under their big ol' umbrella, but mostly they have Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering, the yin-yang of nerd properties. Not you, Warhammer. We all know and love Dungeons & Dragons, the obvious satanic cult recruitment tool where groups of players gather around a table and induce the youth into satanic ritual abuse in order to summon demons. They tried to stop us once before, but they failed. Hail Paimon, King of the West! Praise Paimon! But Magic the Gathering is far more dangerous, being itself a license to print money. This is the more grizzled and far more dangerous sibling to Dungeons & Dragons, and it's a game where players do battle with small rectangular pieces of cardboard illustrated with fun little drawings on them, and they pay how much? And this week, Wizards of the Coast have pushed Magic the Gathering players perhaps a little too far. Now there's talk of boycotting the latest Magic product, there's critical coverage of the game, and of course, my favorite, angry comments. But this recent scandal didn't come out of nowhere. It was entirely foreseeable, and terrifyingly in a way that has massive implications for Dungeons & Dragons and the role-playing game community. So what has happened? Well, this week, Wizards of the Coast revealed the price of one of their many products that they sell to Magic the Gathering players. In this case, what is known as a pre-constructed Commander Masters deck. Now, if you're not into Magic, you might think that I made some of those words up. But don't worry, you don't need to understand what any of them mean in any order, because, I mean, I sure as hell don't. It's simple enough to understand that this product is a box of Magic cards that are predetermined, rather than being a random booster pack of cards that players can gamble on, hopefully, maybe, perhaps being good. This is a pretty standard product from Wizards. They release many of these a year, but this recent announcement has one key difference compared to all the others that have come before it. It has doubled in price. The previous version of this type of box was sold for $50 to $60. However, the new one is being sold for a rip-roaring $100+. A pretty wild doubling of price, and appropriately, the Magic the Gathering community has been pretty, a little bit irked. Now, this price increase has been justified by Wizards as the product itself being premium, which is a pretty meaningless term, admittedly, but essentially what it means is that some of the cards inside this pack are more rare and powerful than is typical. Others have tried to justify the steep doubling of price by referencing that the cards inside can be sold on the secondary market for money. And because of the rarity of the cards in this pack, those rarer cards could fetch more money than a standard common card could on that secondary market. Or, to put it another way, their argument is that you can gamble on the prices of the cards inside this box set remaining the same as they are right now. And if those prices do remain the same, then you can buy this new box and then sell the cards that are inside them for potentially a small profit. Or, to put it another way, price increases are fine if they enable you to take part in a terrible return on investment high-stakes gamble. That's exactly what I want in my children's card game. Thanks, Wizards of the Coast! Anytime people need to grasp for the secondary market as an excuse, you know times are tough. But it's not this specific pricing scandal necessarily that should worry D&D players. After all, Magic the Gathering is a very different beast from Dungeons & Dragons, and it is priced very differently, with different confounding factors like the ever-present secondary market. The more concerning element for D&D here is the escalation that Magic players have had to deal with from Hasbro Wizards, and the fact that this is just the latest in a very long line of scandals for Magic the Gathering as Hasbro pushed the franchise to breaking point for ever-increasing profit and growth, far beyond what the average person would consider reasonable, or even the average Magic the Gathering player. For example, while we in the role-playing game community were fighting against the draconian OGL changes earlier this year, Magic the Gathering players were still reeling from the release of an anniversary box set of nostalgic-fueled Magic cards that were being sold by Wizards in an exclusive box with a price point of $1,000. Now, on the face of it, 75 playing cards printed with art that Wizards already own for $1,000 might be completely jack gargling insane. I mean, that could just be one way to think about it. And if you did, you'd be right, especially considering that these cards were proxies and essentially unusable in the game itself. And sure, since the beginning of time, i.e. 1993, Magic the Gathering players have been quietly selling their plasma to buy randomized card booster packs, and the game itself has always been egregiously monetized, ensnaring nerds with gambling addictions everywhere. But the last few years have been particularly hell-worthy for the player, as the game has become almost impossible for the average player to keep up with. A frequent criticism from the Magic audience these days is that they're being overwhelmed by endless new products, like being at an orgy that just publicly announced a free buffet. Or D&D 3rd edition, remember that? There sure was a lot of books. Seriously though, Magic has gone from having about 5 new releases each year to 26 releases in 2022. Wizards have really been squeezing their core audience for an increasing amount of cash and chugging their wallet juice down like a big gushing glass of mommy's milk. Oh, that's the last time I let Bob Mammon write one of these scripts. Even such a profitable brand as Magic the Gathering is apparently just not enough for Hasbro these days. As things get tougher out there, Magic the Gathering, one of the most expensive games to play in the world, is growing ever more expensive and difficult to keep up with. Times they are tough. Okay, so whatever, right? What does this really have to do with Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing? Well, everything. Because Magic the Gathering encapsulates exactly what Hasbro want Dungeons and Dragons to be. The exact same underlying principles that are driving the increasingly aggressive monetization of Magic the Gathering, with a doubling of the price point being just the latest. These are the exact same underlying principles driving changes to Dungeons and Dragons, and those changes are being performed by the exact same company. I think we'd be fools not to look over the fence and see what's happening with our rectangle-obsessed neighbors. And Hasbro Wizards have been pretty open with comparing the D&D franchise to Magic the Gathering. Infamously, Cynthia Williams, president of Wizards of the Coast, said on an investment call that Dungeons and Dragons is under-monetized. Which of course begs the question, if it's under-monetized, what's that in comparison to? Well, the answer is simple. Magic the Gathering. I mean, admittedly, heroin is under-monetized compared to Magic the Gathering, but still. The very same edicts from Hasbro that have driven Wizards of the Coast to try and double their profit in just a few short years by turning up the heat on Magic the Gathering players will soon enough begin to impact Dungeons and Dragons players too. In fact, we're already beginning to see that. And unless something changes, the present of Magic is very likely to be the future of Dungeons and Dragons. Hasbro Wizards' handling of Magic has undermined the game in the pursuit of excessive profit. And sure, perhaps they have improved on the game in some ways. I'm sure there are people who are really happy to constantly be getting new content every single week for their game. But without a doubt, the wider Magic community have been pushed too far. You don't need to stray very far into Magic fan spaces to hear about overwhelming product releases, increasing price points, out-of-touch offerings, and increasingly unaffordable products. The entire community seems to be perpetually kept at breaking point. And as a result, there's an uncomfortable question staring at the Dungeons and Dragons community. If Hasbro Wizards feel comfortable doubling the price on a Magic product or releasing a $1,000 box set, why would it be any different for Dungeons and Dragons? Spooky. And now that we know that Wizards are working on a virtual tabletop system, Dungeons and Dragons as a platform finally offers an opportunity for Hasbro Wizards to monetize D&D players to the extent that Magic players are monetized. Wizards will soon enough have an unprecedented capacity to monetize their brand, Dungeons and Dragons. And terrifyingly, even for those who aren't invested in Dungeons and Dragons, who maybe only play other role-playing games like Delta Green or Call of Cthulhu or Mithras or any host of other games, how Hasbro handle D&D and the virtual tabletop system is like the goddamn moon landing. This is the first step on new soil, new alien soil, huh? The very first official virtual melding of tabletop RPG and digital play space. It's like being in the 90s again. Of course, there's been other VTTs in the past, but if the one D&D VTT is successful, it will be the first one that is built from the ground up to house a specific game's roleplay experience. Obviously, of course, we're not including the previous attempt of Wizards, which totally failed before, but this one, if it is popular and if it is widely adopted by the D&D community, it will define for a generation what is possible in the virtual sphere, forever changing the face of role-playing, and perhaps for the majority of future generations of new role players. It will come to define the normal way of engaging with tabletop RPGs. Without a doubt, the new Wizards VTT is one of the most important moments in RPG history. This thing has legs, and my excitement for that moment is so soured when I look at what is going on in the Magic the Gathering community right now, because all I can think about is the avenues for monetization that will be available to Wizards of the Coast in this new space, and I cannot help but see Magic the Gathering as a terrifying indication of our future. Because be assured, the digital future of D&D will require restraint from Hasbro to not abuse it. It will require them to be conscious of not taking advantage of vulnerable users. They will need to actively attempt to not alienate role players. There will be a lot of temptation in this virtual Garden of Eden. Now, I hope that the new Wizards VTT will be successful in making D&D more accessible, more playable, and more fun than ever before. But I'm worried that instead, Wizards will bite the apple. Instead, we're going to get the exact opposite effect, because the temptation to aggressively monetize a captive audience may simply be too strong. And if you want to see what that terrifying future could look like, check out this video here. And a huge thanks to my patrons, especially Sonic Bread, Crypto Kev, Mistress Arby, Novani, and Travis Hunter. Thank you guys so much. And if you want to help support the channel and help me keep making content like this, then check out patreon.com/discoursminiatures, and I'll catch you there. Bye bye.